Hi everyone, thank you for joining today's webinar. My name is Sonia Siddiqui and joining me today is Sonia Sidhu. Hi Sonia.
Hi everyone.
Okay, so we're very happy to have Sonia on board here. She's going to be telling us about how to build your network in Canada. So you've got double trouble today. You got two Sonias. So before I hand it over to her, I'm just going to go over a few things on the next slide. I just want to make sure that everyone is properly connected, and I hope everyone knows that you are all on listen only mode, so we will not be able to hear you. But if you are, if you do have questions, please type them into the questions tab. Sonia will be taking questions towards the end of her presentation in the Q&A tab at the bottom of your screen. And please keep your questions short and related to the webinar. And if you are using a laptop or a desktop computer, that's great. But if you're using mobile devices such as cell phones or tablets, I recommend downloading the Zoom app. And on the next slide, I just want to talk a little bit about ACCES. We've been around for over 30 years helping job seekers such as yourselves. We work with over 2,200 employers. We have over 30 tailored programs, which include our sector-specific bridging programs and other programs targeted for youth, women, leadership, and more. And go on our website to find out. And we've got 6 locations in the GTA right now, and with our newest one coming up in Newmarket soon. And we've got this online location presently serving everyone online through our webinars and through all of our programs and service delivery, which is switched to online as of right now. And I'm going to hand it over to you, Sonia.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Just give me 1 second here. Perfect. Just want to make sure the slides are working okay. I think, sorry, just give me 1 second. Awesome. Everyone can hear me okay, I'm assuming. Thank you so much for the introduction, Sonia. As she mentioned, my name is also Sonia. I am the product lead at Arrive. Really excited to be here today with ACCES to host the webinar around how to build your network in Canada, especially during these times, given the current COVID-19 outbreak, and how you can continue to build your network. So my role with Arrive is as a product lead. And so what that means is I set a lot of the strategy for our product experience on Arrive Connections, which is a virtual networking tool for newcomers to Canada. And of course, work with our awesome team to make sure all newcomers have the content, the resources, and the tools you need to succeed. So really excited to be here today. Just gonna turn my video off and continue on to the next slide. So just want to go a quick overview of what we're going to cover today. Of course, we're going to have an overview of Arrive and what we do, talk a little bit about the importance of networking and some tactics of how to go about it. Also the importance of making authentic connections. And then we'll move into the end of the presentation with some best practices and takeaways for everyone to continue the art of networking in your own lives. And as Sonia mentioned, then we'll move into a Q&A and looking forward to taking everyone's questions. So just for starters, wanted to give everyone, for those who are familiar with Arrive, great to have you here. And for those who haven't heard of Arrive before, really excited to share more. And so Arrive is a platform for newcomers to Canada. And what we are is a dynamic community of newcomers who are dedicated to helping all newcomers to Canada succeed in 3 key areas, which is your life, career, and finances. And so Arrive is a venture from RBC Ventures. And so we have been in operations for the last couple years, focused on all the avenues in which we can support newcomers to reach success, whatever that means for you. And so what our true reason for being is to help you create a successful life in Canada and provide the knowledge, resources, tools, and career connections to enable all newcomers to succeed. So for other webinars like this, as well as a couple content pieces that we cover across life, career, and finance, you can find out more at arrivein.com, where you can also learn a little bit more about our app experience, which I will go into on the next slide. And so what Arrive Connections is, again, for those of you who aren't familiar, is a way for you to build your Canadian network digitally. And so what we do is we match newcomers and we match you on a weekly basis with folks who are in a similar stage as you, who have moved recently or who are going to arrive to Canada soon, as well as you can see on the screenshot here, folks who we call ambassadors. And so those are experienced professionals and individuals across Canada who are here to to help you feel supported, to help guide you through your newcomer journey and share personal experiences and lessons learned. And so it's a really great way to help build your network digitally, especially, of course, given the current circumstances. And that's available on the App Store as well as the Google Play Store. So both for Android and iOS. So I'll just move to the next. And so to the topic of today, which is building your network. And so really want to talk about how to adapt your networking skills in the current environment that we're living in, how to continue to nurture the folks you'd like to meet, whether it be in your professional industry, whether it be in an industry you're interested in entering. And so really wanted to pull together a couple practical tips and tools, as well as resources and things to take away from this presentation for you to incorporate into your own lives. And so I wanted to start off by framing, why is networking important? And as you can see on the slide here, there's so many statistics that really say why word of mouth, why tapping into a hidden job market and finding new opportunities, those things are really unlocked by networking and through personal connections. And so what we know is that so many jobs in Canada are really never posted. They're filled through people's networks. And so that number of 57% of jobs being filled through a networking contact, 75% are not even posted online, really puts proof to the fact that networking allows you to share your experiences in a way that's much more personal. And so people put their word and their reputation on the line when they recommend a candidate. So a recommendation has a much more higher consideration rate for an opportunity than, let's say, applying through a job portal alone. And so it's really important to maintain the relationships you make so that you can increase chances of your word of mouth referrals and tapping into that hidden job market, which is really where most of the jobs in Canada exist, as well as elsewhere. And on top of that, what you know is that what we know, is that you never know what connections may be helpful in the future or that you may be able to help in the future. And so networking is really about how do you build your arena of people that you know, so that you can both succeed in the areas you want to succeed in, as well as, you know, who knows down the line if you're able to help someone else out in return. And so that really provides a segue into how do you talk about yourself online? And this is, we've done webinars as well as events on personal branding in the past. So I'd encourage everyone to check that out at arrivein.com. And so the question we get asked often is, what is a personal brand? And so what it really is, as it says here, it's a combination of your skills, your experience, but moreover, it's really about what distinguishes you from others. What makes you unique? What are the unique qualities and attributes that you bring to the table as an individual looking to add value to any company, any organization? And so a really great jumping off point is think about, how would others describe you? And often, I know we've had this in the events in the past, that sometimes I also struggle with, how would I describe myself? And it's often great to get some feedback from close friends and family who know you well and are looking to help you succeed, and would share some positive attributes about what makes you unique and how do you bring that into your story online. And so with that said, Personal branding really does end up showing your value and what you bring to the table, and it really makes you identifiable from others. So, you know, with so many different folks with different skill sets and different experiences, what really sets you apart is who you are as a person. Why would someone remember you from a networking event, or let's say a virtual networking event? And how does it allow you to unlock meeting more people? You know, if you just share your skills and experiences versus you add a name, a face, and a personality to those skills and experiences, it really makes you more distinguishable from others who are applying for a similar role. And so with that said, if you have a notebook in front of you, or if you have some time today or in the coming days, I'd say take a moment to reflect on some of these elements of your personal brand. So here's a few questions that you can use as prompts to think about what are those unique identifiable attributes. So the first would be, who are you? You know, what's part of your story? What makes you who you are? What are your key strengths? What are things that you consistently rely on in situations that push you through? Maybe it's your communication skills, maybe it's your leadership ability, maybe it's your ability to motivate a team, whatever it may be. And then really think about what are some accomplishments that you've had over the past couple years, or the past 10 years, whatever the lifespan of your career, your educational accomplishments. Really write those down and make sure you recognize the awesome things that I'm sure so many of you have achieved. And then take a moment to reflect forward, especially it's important to remind yourself of some of those reasons you came to Canada in the first place. Where do you really envision yourself in 3 years? What are some of those goals that keep you motivated along your journey? And make sure to incorporate that in your personal brand story. And so with that, I know I alluded to it before, but polishing your online presence and engaging online is a really great way to have people see your personal brand in such an online driven world that we live in. And so of course you see the logos of so many prominent platforms there. We have LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, maybe you use Pinterest. And so whichever platforms you use, really leverage the different kinds of mediums to connect with different audiences. Of course, the one that we will highlight the most is LinkedIn, and how LinkedIn is such a powerful tool to both highlight your professional expertise. Maybe you can include some case studies, or even share articles and information that you're interested in. I'd also say you can optimize your online presence for search engines. So that's why it's important to fill out so many of those fields, whether it be, you know, your first name, your location, using relevant keywords, putting the location of the city that you'd like to find a opportunity in, and making sure that you don't miss any of those minute details. It really helps with, let's say an employer is looking up your profile, or someone you met at a networking event. It helps boost your searchability. On more social platforms like Facebook or Instagram, it shows that you're able to show how you embody your core values through your lifestyle. And so let's say you are somebody who enjoys exercise in your spare time, or let's say you have some personal projects on the side. You're able to share those sides of yourself, of course, in a respectful way on social platforms, and you're able to show, you know, that fuller picture of your personal brand. Also, it's really important to note that 70% of recruiters have rejected candidates based on information that they find online. And so that's a statistic I want to bring up, because of course you have to be very mindful on what you share, given we're in such a connected world with so many different platforms at play, to really make sure that you're being mindful of the types of photos you share, the types of information you share, because it all tells a story about your personal brand. And so really what a lot of this boils down to is putting in the upfront work, setting aside time to polish your online presence, and really start with having a specific goal. What do you want to get out of the networks that you're involved in? Think about a specific goal, whether it be, you know, for the sake of building community and meeting new people, Perhaps it's because you want to find a specific job or a new opportunity, or maybe it's even you just want to learn about a certain area. So really start off with what's your goal, what's your objective, and then start by doing your homework. And something we like to say is to both be interested and also be interesting yourself. But overall, you really want to make sure that you find out more about the person that you're interested in, find out about the subject matter you're interested in, because it adds some more genuine and authentic connection. If you're, let's say, trying to reach out to somebody in your network who is in a specific field you're interested in, definitely try to learn about them through their online presence. What types of articles and resources have they shared? What expertise do they highlight? And make it really personal when you're trying to reach out to folks. The next I'd say is remembering the details. Make sure that you, when you have a follow-up conversation with someone, make sure that you reference a past conversation. So that's really around both doing your homework and making it personal. It'll make it seem like you care and you've taken the extra step. And take some time to read someone's bio or see what kind of information have they shared most recently. And the last piece is doing a networking audit. And so what that means is really taking stock of who do you know, what groups have you been a part of, who do you know that knows someone? And so ways to really start thinking about that is often a good jumping off point is think about your educational background, what your alumni community may have at play for you to tap into is a really great jumping off point. Other communities you may have been involved in could include extracurricular or volunteer opportunities, or even alumni of a past career or professional opportunity that you've had. And so really start to make those connections of which circles and communities have I been a part of in the past, which ones have I leveraged, and which ones are still an opportunity for me. And so the next is really moving into where to network. And of course, we have social distancing here on the slide because of the current times we're living in, given the COVID-19 outbreak. So during these times where social distancing is required of all of us, events, meetups, and conferences are all but canceled. And so what we know is that networking and network building has to happen digitally for a certain period of time for the foreseeable future. So which makes a presentation like this and some of these tips and tricks really important, especially now, given that some of those in-person opportunities are not going to be available or accessible to us for the next couple of months. And so with Arrive Connections, for example, just wanted to highlight how this can work really well in this type of a context. Every week we pair newcomers with 2 like-minded peers, as well as an ambassador who's really a mentor of sorts on the platform, who can share tips and information from their own experience and may point you to some of the opportunities that they know in their own network. And so on top of that, what we see here is professional organizations, networking sites. A lot of organizations are hosting online webinars, are hosting virtual information sessions. So I'd encourage you to keep an eye out for that on whichever companies or organizations you're interested in. Furthermore, depending on what field you're in, a lot of conferences or events that would traditionally be held in person are moving to an online format. A really great one, for example, here in Toronto is a conference called Collision, which is a technology conference, and they've moved that to be fully online. And I believe that it is at a much more subsidized rate. And so much more accessible for folks to tune in or listen to certain talks. And so I'd encourage you to look at if any events that were traditionally going to be hosted in person have moved online. Is there a way to tap into that as another opportunity for yourself? And so here's a couple of key kind of takeaways for online networking. Is first starting off with, what's your brand statement? And so if you needed a good jumping off point, I'd encourage you to head to arrivein.com, look up personal brand, and you'll see a lot of past blogs and resources around how to craft a personal brand statement. Second would be to join some online groups and communities in which you're interested in. And so that could be both from a professional standpoint. Let's say you are someone like myself who's interested in product management, and you would join, let's say, a product group or a product management group. But also there's so many other online communities. Let's say you're interested in a particular cause or volunteering opportunity. There's a lot of ways to engage there. And of course, we have a lot of resources around how to find volunteering opportunities and whatnot in these times on our blog. The third would be, if you're particularly interested in a certain area, there's always a chance to share your voice, contribute relevant content to that area. And so a really accessible way to do that is, of course, on your own LinkedIn. It also helps you hone in on your communication skills and figure out how to share an effective message. And then on top of that, if you have any sort of relevant blogs or sites that you say, hey, I'd really love to contribute content there, I'd encourage you to reach out to those sites and those content centers. The last two is really to keep active and stay connected. Networking and online networking especially is really, you will get out of it what you put into it. So if you stay connected and stay engaged with the topics you care about, with the causes you care about, you're able to create more authentic relationships and also stay on top of those causes you really care about. It also may allow you to connect with further people and really open up opportunities to expand your network. So moving into making it personal. And so let's give a scenario where you want to reach out to someone. And so what we want to talk about here is adding a personal touch to all of your interactions versus making things generic. So yes, this does take a little bit of extra time. It takes a little bit of extra research and, of course, doing your homework on the person or organization you're reaching out to, but also is really proven to be much more effective when you're trying to get a response and get something back from someone. So on the next slide, let's move into a potential example. And so here we have, I'll just read it out here, of if someone were to reach out to Sonia, let's say, for example. So it says, hi, Sonia, wondering if I could ask you a few questions on X. And so this is where you really insert, what's the topic you want to chat about? Again, this goes back to what's your goal. So let's say you're just trying to learn about a topic and it's much more informational. Let's say, I'd really love to learn about the nonprofit industry and how that works in Canada. Great. And so the next sentence would be, I saw your profile and was interested about your experience with Y. And again, this shows that you're really interested in the person in particular, that you've done your homework. Let's say, I saw your profile and I was interested in your experience with ACCESS and how you were able to build a robust newcomer program. Awesome. It's also, the next sentence really gives you an opportunity to share a little bit about yourself, of how you can relate to that person. Let's say I also did X, Y, and would love to get some help on, or get some advice and see if I could help you with X, Y. So let's say, do you have some sort of a commonality, a common thread? Clearly there already is some sort of a commonality there because you've reached out to this person based on some sort of mutual shared interest, whether it be their company or their role. So think about what's a way that you can relate to them. And then, of course, leave off on a personal and friendly and inviting send-off of saying, take care and hope to hear from you, or have a great day, hope to hear from you soon, something along those lines. We also do have more templates like this. But again, just to really reiterate why this works, is it's A, personal and inviting, B, shows that there is some research done and that I really care about Sonia's experience. It has a clear objective and an ask. And then, of course, demonstrates value in return. It shows that you want to help this person also with whatever initiatives or things that they're working on. And so last couple points here is networking at events. And so just want to, of course, acknowledge that this is obviously not super applicable in the current environment where we can't gather physically, but, and given many events are canceled at this time. But something to really keep in mind for the eventual circumstance when networking events start happening again and you find yourself meeting and greeting with a group of people. And of course, a couple of these tips will work well for virtual networking or any sort of virtual events you're a part of. And so again, and I know we've hammered this point a couple times, but do your research. Take some time to do a bit of research on the organizers or the presenters. And so read their bios, if they have some, or if you can find them on LinkedIn, and think about the types of people who would be participating at this event. And you can really try to anticipate the types of folks who will be in the room. What sort of backgrounds might they have, or what sort of topics may they be interested in? So for example, let's say you're at a tech conference. I'm sure it's reasonable to expect that you'd find some folks in the Toronto tech community there if you're in Toronto, or if you're in Vancouver, or you're in Montreal. I'm sure it's reasonable to expect you'd find some folks in certain areas, let's say growth marketing, or product management, or folks who are software developers, as well as folks who are on the leadership teams. And so, of course, really familiarizing yourself with that subject matter before you get to the event. The second is to arrive early. It's always a great idea to arrive early, and if not at least on time. So early in the event, it's often that there'll be likely fewer people. And so that often gives you a networking opportunity there. How do you introduce yourself to the organizers, learn a bit more about them, and as well as really meet some like-minded, keen attendees who have also come early. And it really allows you to really get your bearings, feel comfortable, and make sure that you have a great place and an area to stand and network with other people as they start to come in. Also, a fun trick that we like to say is wherever, if there's food and drinks at an event, if you kind of situate yourself near those, you're naturally going to meet some folks, given that all of us, of course, do enjoy some food and drinks at an event. And so you'll generally navigate to an area where there'll be a lot of people. And so a couple of just things to make note of and make sure you don't forget is to make eye contact and smile, as well as ask questions and listen. And so in North America, of course, it's really, really conventional to make eye contact, to smile, to acknowledge another person when you're talking to them. And it's also important to make sure that you acknowledge what they say. You may have to ask them to repeat their name and make sure that you're pronouncing it properly. And you would absolutely want to make sure that you're engaging with what someone says. And so that leads to the ask questions and listening. So remembering to be interested instead of only being interesting. And so finding more about someone, practicing active listening. Often what I find is a helpful trick is if somebody has introduced themselves, engage with that thought a little and maybe even repeat it back in a certain way and ask them a question to elaborate on it. So let's say somebody says they work at a product role at a Toronto-based startup. You can acknowledge that by saying, wow, that's great that you work in product, and it really reinforces that for yourself. And then ask them a question to further elaborate. Maybe something like, how long have you been in that role? Or what do you like best about working in product? When you have a continuing conversation, it's really great to see if there's an opportunity to ask for contact information, if you see that the conversation is naturally flowing in a good direction, and there seems to be some mutual interest, or even something that an opportunity or some sort of area that you could continue a conversation at a later date with someone, of saying, hi, I'd love to maybe reach out in the future for a coffee chat or a phone call to follow up on that topic that you're speaking about. And so in general, being curious during a networking event can do wonders for your networking skills. So sharing information about yourself will allow people to have details to both continue the conversation, and asking questions to help understand their interests as well as have them understand you. One tip I use is for every sentence they say, ask yourself, how can you help with that? So how can you amplify whatever it is they're working on? And so it might not be something you come up with on the spot, but it's your add value type of skill is a muscle that will get stronger as you use it. If you're in a situation where you're not quite sure what to say, of course, in networking events, it may be, it sometimes is difficult to continue the conversation, or maybe you're not sure when you should move away to meet someone else. It's always okay to take a moment and reflect. And of course, recognize that you're both in a similar situation. So if you're in a networking event, of course, there is some sort of a connector already there. If you could say, wow, there's so many people in the room, take a pause to recognize your surroundings if you're kind of losing your train of thought. And then lastly, the last couple of points, of course, is to, of course, ask for your contact information when you're exiting a conversation. Thank people for their time. And you never know what connections could be helpful in the future. After the event, I find it also really, from a personal standpoint, really helpful to take some moments to debrief and reflect. For myself, whether that be a couple, 10 minutes or so to write, what's 3 things I learned from this event in your journal? What's a couple people who I'd love to follow up with? Because when something is so fresh in your mind, it's really good to take note of it in the moment. And then also take stock of what are some things that went well and what are some things that didn't go well. It's totally okay if an event doesn't go exactly how you had hoped, but really good to take note of that and acknowledge, okay, what's something I could change next time or something that I'd like to try differently. And then, of course, when you're following up, send a thank you note in a timely manner to the folks who you met in the room, and plan to complete whatever action items were mentioned. Let's say you said, oh, hey, I had a really great article I'd love to send you about that topic. Follow up on that in your email or your LinkedIn message to that person of saying, as I mentioned at XYZ event, would love to get your thoughts on the following article I read about product, for example. And so what we recommend in general of rules of thumb of networking is try to connect with a new person every 10 to 15 minutes. So that's around 4 people or so an hour. And so at the end of the event, it's a really good kind of gate check for yourself of if you've met around 8 to 10 new people, that's a 2-hour or 2.5-hour networking event. That's a really great start. And of course, if you go to an event and let's say you tried to meet 4 people, but you only met 2, even still acknowledging that you met 2 new people that you otherwise wouldn't have. And then of course, taking a moment when you're debriefing and reflecting of how to do that differently in the future. And so a couple of icebreakers to help you understand what the other person is looking for and can help figure out how you can be useful to them in order to build a connection. And so here's some icebreakers that we find are really effective. I'll just read them out quickly, which is, again, acknowledging some of the commonalities you already have, which is how did you hear about this event? What brings you to this event? A couple other things like what's been keeping you busy lately? What are some interesting projects you're working on? And what other types of events do you go to? And so something to acknowledge here is a lot of these questions are very engaging and they're relatively inviting to answer, where you're really interested in what this person is spending their time on. And so something to note is we often say that we often see that many people ask, what do you do as a first question, or what do you do for work as a first question? And it's actually interesting. We wanted to acknowledge that that question, what do you do, or what do you do for work, actually reduces the individual only to their job title. And so it won't help you to build a meaningful connection or a conversation as some of the ones here, which are really about the projects they're working on, their own personal interests, and their own motivations for being in the same room or the same virtual room for that matter. So even some of these conversations may work if you're in a virtual networking event or any sort of online forum where you're meeting people as well as in person when we're all eventually back to networking at in-person events. And so moving into the summary, we're nearing the end of the webinar here. And so the summary here in 6 points is to really start off by polishing your online presence. Which channels do you use? Take stock of LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram. Let's say you have your own personal portfolio or website. Really polish that and make sure it tells a consistent story. Then really think about what goals are you looking for? Is it whether it be a new career opportunity or a new job, or it be an interest in a certain area or a subject matter? Figure out what your goal is and your objective. And often I would say start off with one and then build up from there. The third would be to do your homework. So whether it be people, organizations, causes that you're interested in, research those spaces, know about the subject matter that you're interested in. And of course, really gonna repeat that phrase of be interested, not just interesting. And so that really applies to the fourth point there of making it personal. When you're reaching out to folks who you'd love to connect with, make it personal and add a personal touch. Show that you have vested interest in who they are as a person. And then you also have some sort of mutual commonalities and common ground. The last couple points is to do a networking audit. See what involvement you have in different communities, in different groups, and make sure you're really amplifying your ways to engage in so many of the communities that I'm sure you're all a part of, or maybe haven't thought about too much recently. Then also take stock of which communities do I want to be involved in that I'm not in yet. And then the last part is to just practice and reflect. Networking is like a muscle, as we've mentioned. It's something that gets stronger over time. So practicing and making networking a part of your routine will allow you to improve your skills as well as get stronger and more effective as you go along your networking journey. And so really just wanted to end off the webinar before we move into Q&A with bringing up Arrive Connections again. And so wanted to summarize that a lot of these things of building your network and creating networking as a muscle can really be satisfied by Arrive Connections as a way to engage with a dynamic community of newcomers who are both in a similar stage, as well as some ambassadors who can really support with the goals and the lessons learned that they've experienced in the past. And so for Arrive Connections, you can download that on the App Store and the Play Store. And we're at a community of over 60,000 newcomers now. So really excited to continue growing, especially in these times where networking and staying connected and staying supported is so important. And so would really love to have all of you on Arrive Connections. I'm one of the ambassadors, so hope to chat with you soon there. And then the last piece I'll mention is that arrivein.com is a really great resource for finding all the tools, content, and knowledge you need across your life, career, and finance. So whether it be those personal branding topics that I mentioned, or even we have a past webinar on making sure your LinkedIn is up to speed. A couple of really great resources that I'd encourage everyone to check out. And so just wanted to say again, thank you all so much for your time today and for your attention and listening to me ramble about networking. I hope it was really helpful and would really encourage everyone to check out the latest content for your life in Canada at arrivein.com. And so with that, I know we have some time for Q&A. And so Sonia, I will pass it over to you to facilitate some questions from the participants. Thank you all so much.
Thank you, Sonia. That was a great presentation, and I'm so glad that people were able to watch it and learn from it. So I'm going to go over the questions. So everyone, please type your questions into the Q&A tab. We will